happy Father's Day, whether you have one or are one.
Sitting there with your pregnant wife watching Alien.
It's just like that scene in Alien, except there's more blood. Alien on Broadway, which will probably be happening. So I'm not gay, Dad.
Actually, an adult literature fairy that leaves them
from hitting that bush, and I punched the bush. I ask of you, the Council of Geek Dads.
It's an all Geek Dad special on PodCRASH. Welcome to the show, folks. It's a special Father's Day edition of PodCRASH, and today I'm crashing a podcast called GeekDad. Well, I'll be talking about, fathers and being a father and all the fun stuff that entails. First of all, I want to thank everyone who listens to this show for posting amazing reviews on iTunes. It helps other people find out about the show, so the more you post a review, especially one with comments, it helps other people discover the show. And really, the groundswell of support for this has been incredible. So this is my thank you to you on this Father's Day weekend. Also, want to say a couple things about last week's show. Last week's show that was uploaded was the bonus episode with Proudly Resents. There was a problem with the mix. It's been fixed, and I re-uploaded it. So you can re-download, if you didn't hear that bonus episode where I speak to Adam Spiegelman about Planet of the Apes and Logan's Run. I fixed the episode. The issue probably had to do with the fact that I'm in the middle of a move. I'm in the midst of a move and unpacking boxes and trying to get organized, which also explains why this episode is late. So I apologize for that. But this is going to be well worth it. A couple of plugs. First of all, I am going to be doing a live episode of PodCRASH with Defective Geeks Saturday, June 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Comic Bug in Manhattan Beach. You can go to facebook.com/PodCRASH for more info. Also, you can, I'm doing stand-up at DC Pearson's Little Modern show. That's Sunday, June 24th at 8 p.m. at 6476 Santa Monica Boulevard. You can get more info at thelittlemodern.com. Also, that comic book live show that I did was really successful with Sasha Knox. Sasha Knox was pretty awesome. She dressed as Catwoman. Anyway, so we did this whole Batman-themed episode of Comic Book Live where I come out dressed as Batman having gotten off work, and then a bunch of extremely talented improv comics act out scenes based on things that were said. So we are going to do that again. It's a Dark Knight-themed Comic Book Live. That's Saturday, June 30th at 10 p.m. at IO West 6366 Hollywood Boulevard. You can go to where can you go? Wait, I got to check where you can go. You can go to ioimprov.com/west. And wait a sec. Oh, wait. This Tuesday at Meltdown Comics, the Nerd Melt Theater, Dr. Apocalypse presents Effed Up Futures. This is June 19th at 8 p.m. at the Nerdist Theater. It'll be 8 p.m. show, and it's presented by Rob Kuttner. He's the author of Apocalypse How and The Future According to Me. So he put together this show. I'm in the show with Brian Posehn, Jane Espenson, Phil Lamar, Mike Upchurch, Joel Levinson, and it's I'm going to be presenting effed up visions of the future on film, and everyone has sort of a different thing that they're going to present based on screwed up versions of the future. I think it means fucked up. I think it's fucked up visions of the future. That's this Tuesday. You should come to that if you're in LA. I'll be there. Okay. All right. Enough with the plugs. Now on to the show. Thing is this: if you're listening to this show, you definitely have a father because you needed that to actually be conceived. But more than that, hopefully you had an involved dad like I had. And my dad, in spite of the fact that, my parents got divorced when I was 9, he was an involved dad. And he, in fact, one thing you don't know about my dad, not only was he into computers before it was cool to be into computers, he was a nerd before the word nerd even like existed. He also was a singer in a barbershop quartet. And he would actually take me to, he would travel everywhere. Mississippi, he would go to Ohio. I mean, I'm from the Detroit area, Michigan. He would travel all over Kansas City to do gigs with his quartet, the Vagabonds. And if you don't know what barbershop is, barbershop, if you know what SPEBSQSA stands for, well, first of all, it's SPEBSQA if you're trying to pronounce it, but actually it's the Society for the Preservation and Encouragement of Barbershop Quartet Singing in America. And my dad was, during the week, he worked for an auto company in a computer department. On weekends, he was traveling and doing shows, singing in front of thousands of people. It was unbelievable. And to me, it was weird. Like, I would see him, like, he'd be standing at a table, like, selling, like, at the time it was cassettes and 8 tracks of his quartet, the Vagabonds, which was the one he's most widely known for. In fact, it's they have this big national tournament every year for barbershop singing. And there's a great documentary about that called American Harmony, which you should actually see American Harmony. But my dad would sell his cassettes, and then further on he would sell CDs, and he was just so. His demeanor with everyone didn't matter who they were, what walk of life. He would sit there and spend time with every single person. I really think that, like, I really looked up to him in the way that he treated everyone around him, and just seeing the admiration that he got. I think that's probably why I became, in some ways, a performer. Was the fact that he was involved in this. Although I have to say, I have no talent when it comes to singing, none whatsoever. I have 2 sisters. Both of my sisters can sing. My dad can sing. I can't carry a tune at all, even though I actually sing the opening title song to this podcast. But that's the best. I mean, it's really, that's the extent of my range, is something highly tweaked with software. But my dad would get out there and sing in front of groups. And I want to actually play for you as a tribute to my dad on this Father's Day weekend. I want to play for you. Here's a quick intro of his group, the Vagabonds, and then a song that he was really widely known for. And he's sang the lead. So this is when you hear him, that's him. That's him. It's my dad, Dennis Gore. Here they are, the Vagabonds.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a treat to introduce a musical machine. One of the finest quartets our society has ever produced. And they have represented our district well many times at the international contests. We've really just taken these guys to our heart, and this could be one of their last presentations on any stage. The pride and joy of the Pioneer District, the Vagabonds!
Okay, now imagine being like 9 years old and watching your dad in front of an audience where he's getting this kind of applause and whatnot. He's being introduced by a guy named Doran McTaggart, who's big in SPEBSQA. And this is 1979 when this recording was done. And then this song that my dad sings, it's upcoming, was actually sung by Elvis, and they did sort of a barbershop reworking of it. It's called "Until It's Time for You to Go."
Before you go away, I just want to say, you're not a dream, you're not an angel, you're a woman. I'm not a king, I'm a man. Take my hand. We'll make a space in the lives that we've planned, and there we'll stay until it's time for you to go. Yes, we're different, worlds apart, not the same. We laughed and played at the start like in a game. You could have stayed stayed outside my heart, but in you came, and there you'll stay until it's time for you to go. Don't ask why of me, don't ask how, don't ask forever. Love me now. This love of mine had no beginning, it has no end. I was an oak, now I'm a willow, I can bend. And though I'll never in my life see you again, still I'll stay until you go. Don't ask why of me, don't ask how, don't ask forever. Love me now. This love of mine had no beginning, it has no end. I was an oak, now I'm a willow, I can bend. And though I'll never in my life see you again, still I'll stay until you go. I will miss you so.
That song always gets me. Like it was amazing to watch as a kid. Women would swoon over him when he would sing this song, but it was great. Like one of my fondest memories as a kid actually was being able to stay home from school because he was on the Phil Donahue show with a couple other barbershop quartets. So I got to see my dad on TV as a kid, and I got to get off school, which was pretty cool. So that was just amazing. But it's look, I know that like music today, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of music today. It's tough, it's rough to find music that you can be into. This was music I grew up with this and the Beatles pretty much. So, because my dad loved the Beatles, and I love the Beatles also. And then I would listen to barbershop music, and he would take me on the road. So, and it's just one of my fondest memories as a kid. Wanted to do that as a tribute to my dad. But one thing a lot of you may find surprising about me, I'm also a father. I have a daughter and a son. Yes, I know, crazy, weird. But I also have very strong opinions about parenting, which is why I really wanted to be on the Geek Dad show. Like, just badly, because especially living in LA, you see so many morons that are trying to raise kids, and they're doing it in completely the wrong ways, disciplining them incorrectly, or just like whatever it is. It just drives me nuts. So I pursued. I said I want to be on the show called Geek Dad, and this was recorded a while ago, but I wanted to actually run these clips for you, like over Father's Day weekend. And I was on the show. It was recorded via Skype, but it was actually video Skype. And I was on with like three other dudes who do the show. Matt Blum, Jonathan Liu, and Ken Denmead we were kind of, it was like a Brady Bunch thing with the four of us in the Skype thing. So we talked about all issues related to technology and raising kids, because it's different today when you're trying to raise kids with all of these new distractions, whether it be mobile devices or video games or whatnot. And the thing is this, I'm just as into them as they are. So I have to, in a way, kind of temper myself and be an example for them while I'm also into playing the new Spider-Man video game on Xbox. I know, it's weird. So, but GeekDad, I think we put a lot of those issues into perspective. It was so much fun to be on the show. Like, and those guys, they invited me back. Look, you can be back on PodCRASH. We'll just be back in each other's shows. It'll be great. So, okay, so here it is. GeekDad, happy Father's Day, whether you are a dad or have one. Geek Dads Unite.
You probably walk through the floor at Comic-Con like a lord. You know, my people. Yes, but,
the my people part I definitely relate to, because I feel like I'm among people that I relate to. I mean, these are, and so it does annoy me that Hollywood's kind of invaded in a way. But I mean, I've been going there for years, and only recently I'll wear a mask if I want to shop, uninterrupted. So I'm like a minor celebrity sort of in that world, which is a lot of fun. Because I like my fans. I genuinely like the people that like me. Generally, they're into the same things I'm into, whether it be movies or tech or podcasts and whatnot. So I feel it's a good place to be.
That's perfect. Have you ever thought about starting your own con?
Only as a joke one year, I said we should start a con called Rebel Con, where it's just all the things that they don't let you do at Comic-Con.
Yeah, but you get a whole bunch of very disappointed Star Wars nerds.
Right. Yes, I'm among them. But I'm just
this
really
is totally
excited
not what we imagined, man.
But I'm really excited about this podcast because I approached you guys about wanting to be on it because I am a dad. And it's one of the things a lot of people who know me maybe from Attack of the Show on G4 don't know about me. I mean, among the hosts that are on the show, I'm the only one who's an actual father. And then when you find out like how old my kids are, people don't believe it because I had kids when I was kind of young, and I'm really into being a responsible dad and have a lot of philosophies related to it, and have had to deal with a lot of issues when it comes to tech, whether it be managing video games or my son getting online and getting into trouble. And I've had to come up with unique solutions. There are no books on parenting in the age of technology, and I think we're making it up, like right here among the four of us.
We totally are. I mean, yeah, GeekDad, our whole community is really built around a lot of those issues. How are we dealing with our kids being online and being 1,000 times more connected than we were at their ages? So.
And I wonder how that affects their brains. I mean, there's a lot of studies about that, about how actually kids these days, they get bored in classrooms because they're so used to, the input that they get from the internet and the quick accessibility of facts. And it is almost, I feel like there's certain levels of math where it's like, why don't they just teach first graders how to use a calculator? As long as they understand the concept behind a multiplication table, if we gave them calculators in first grade, think of what they could do by ninth grade. I mean, it sounds kind of radical, but
they don't get multiplication tables till like third grade. So
that's true.
My wife is a teacher, so I can.
That's true, but I'll tell you that you see kids now, like 2-year-olds, that instinctively know how to use an iPad. There's something about it. I mean, I'm sure you guys have experienced it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, my kids are a little older. I have a 17-year-old son who's in high school, and I have a 19-year-old daughter who's in college. And I'm very protective of them because I had an issue once with a crazy fan like 10 years ago. Ooh. So I'm very protective of my kids. My kids and I were not friends on Facebook. But I think what's weird also being a movie geek, like when my daughter was born, the only thing I could compare it to, because it was a C-section, and I like to say to my friends, it's like, giving
like
birth.
Alien,
it's kind of like, it's just like that scene in Alien, when the thing came out of John Hurt's stomach and it was all gory and there's blood everywhere, except there's more blood. I'm sure you guys must have been in the room when your kids were born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We actually watched Alien for the first time while my wife was pregnant with her first daughter.
Oh,
I mean, by then, we knew what was gonna, what's gonna, you can't watch Alien and not know that this thing is going to happen, right? Like, we knew it was gonna happen, but we watched that, and we actually, because we stayed in the hospital, after she was born, we stayed there for about a week. We watched number 2 while we were while we were at the hospital after she was born. So
imagine the queen was down in the basement somewhere laying eggs. I just can't imagine though. You're sitting there with your pregnant wife watching Alien, and maybe just casually you have your hand on her belly while you watch the film, and the baby kicks. I would freak. I'd be like, oh, jeez, okay, yeah.
Wait, no, that's...
But I mean, it's and she was born C-section, so it was this like, look, there's the head, like coming out of the middle of your
and my wife's
stomach.
guts. Oh.
But it's weird. Like, I'm so glad I never preserved that moment on video. It's one of the I have a lot of video of my kids when they were kids, but I definitely
that's a
made
TMI moment. Yeah,
didn't film that. I do have a photo of myself in the hospital garb, like holding my daughter, and it's great. I burst out in tears. It's one of those things where I really wanted a son. I was like, oh, can't wait to have a son. And then I was like, well, I'm having a daughter. That'll be cool. When she was born, man, it was just like
it's
tears.
All over. Yeah.
Like love at first sight. It's one of those things where just like that instant connection. And then I've always been so protective of my kids. And my daughter was like 2. This is a weird thing. At the house I was living at the time in Pasadena, we had this bush that she would kind of go around and it would like knock her over. It was just not trimmed right. I remember getting so mad one day. She went around and tripped and fell from hitting that bush, and I punched the bush. That's how angry I got. I just actually physically lit and just punched a plant that was on the side of my house. It was sort of ridiculous.
That is absolutely a true story. I punched a bush, but look, the one thing is with my kids that I'm actually really proud of is the fact that they've sort of gravitated towards their own thing. I don't try to like push anything on them. I try to say, here's some things you might be interested in, but they gravitate towards whatever they're interested in. And my daughter, in particular, of course, like every young female, she got a lot of Barbies. Not into Barbies. She ended up being into Godzilla. I don't know how, maybe through osmosis, maybe the fact that I was into Godzilla. I don't know. I didn't push it on her, but she, of course, like any good girl, ripped the heads off the Barbies and was into Godzilla. Unfortunately, it was the 1998 Godzilla with Matthew Broderick, but that's another story. At least it was a monster. I'll take what I can get. Okay, back to the Geek Dad podcast.
Well, I think I think we're all very lucky because we all have kids that are close in age. You realize
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal when it comes to sharing clothes, but also interest in I'm serious, interest in TV shows,
yes,
pop culture, video games. Certain things. If they get sort of more than 3 or 4 years apart, like you get like 5 years apart. 5 years apart, I think is like a cutoff. That's where it's like they start to not be able to relate. They're almost
different generations.
Right.
But totally. I mean, I think one of the best things that I'm able to bond with my kids over, which I think is not necessarily unique to geek culture because it's out there a little more in the general culture too, but is video games. Our whole Christmas, the biggest things that we got were Modern Warfare 3, Skyrim, Forza 4, all these games, and literally my 2 boys and I are all working our way through Skyrim right now, different at different paces and whatever, but we're constantly talking about, all right, what level did you get to? Did you finish this quest yet? Oh, did you see what happens on the top of the mountain? Oh my goodness, and it's fantastic. This is not something that we had with our parents.
Well, what's funny is I'm not friends with my kids on any social networks, Twitter, Facebook, any of that. The only place we're friends is on Xbox Live. That's we're all friends. We're friends on Xbox because we play games or we'll do Connect together and whatnot. And what's funny in playing games with my kids, because I mean I grew up with like Odyssey 2 and Atari 2600.
Had the Odyssey, yeah.
It's just sort of all that stuff. But it's funny because watching them play games, they really get into, of course, the Marvel movies. The superhero movies they're into. And what's funny is that my understanding is the Marvel games are far more profitable than the comic books. The comic books are really for guys like us that grew up with actual comic books and used to read them and whatnot. But now they really keep those comic books alive for us. They're really written for us now. But it's like my kids are playing these Marvel, superhero video games, not realizing that, do you know that those characters came from comic books? They're things that you used to read when you were a kid, and they had balloons and Dad, it's like, I'm Spider-Man right now. I'm punching out the Green Goblin. Why do I care about a comic?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you consider that any given, more popular comic book still only sells, 30 to 50,000 copies
right
in any given month, and they're priced at $2.99 now, something like that. Whereas one of those video games will sell 1 million copies and cost $50.
Yeah, so it's
obviously
interesting.
The money is there.
Well, the source of their knowledge of the characters comes from the video games, where the stories are consistent with the comics, the general stories and of those characters. But it's just funny that's where their connection is.
Yeah,
and that experience of reading a comic book is lost. Boy, I'm sounding like an old geezer.
Yeah.
Can we change it to Geek Geezer?
You old fart, you. I remember when comics were printed on paper and they had 4 colors.
And it was on like really thin slices of wood.
We had to go down to the 7-Eleven and spin the rack every month to see what they wanted.
Yeah, but it's just funny to have to tell them that and actually bring out my comics. And I would bring out my comics and say, hey, you can read any of these. You can have some if you want. No interest whatsoever. And they haven't adopted the digital comics. I don't know what you guys think of digital comics.
Basically, that DC and Marvel are still, totally committing suicide with, they keep announcing there's going to be day and date. I don't think it's executed yet. Until they do that. I mean, I literally was given a promo Nook tablet to celebrate that Marvel had made inked a deal with Barnes and Noble to put comics in the Nook store. Mm-hmm. And what was available? Like 5 old trades. Mm. It was old. There's no day and date. So I'm like, well, this is wonderful, but until I can actually buy all of the 52, that's DC, everything's coming out every month. I will subscribe to comic books on this if you allow me to. That would be fantastic. You're not doing that yet. It's a waste of my time.
Maybe what they have to, maybe the lack of success in that area has to do with the cost. I mean, if they made them 25 cents, I'd love to buy a bunch of comics.
Well, I think the music model is there, 99 cents.
Right.
Maybe even $1.99, but at least 99 cents, you could do it. You've got no printing costs whatsoever. And also look at it that it doesn't have to make a ton of money, because you know what the comics are? They are your IP loss leader for the movies and TV and other media you're going to do.
And merch.
And merch. It's all intellectual property. So if you actually had 50 books coming out every month, and you had 50 or 100,000 people subscribe to each of those books and getting invested in those stories, then you're gonna have a movie come out every other year that's gonna have a $50 to $100 million opening weekend. It would work.
Cool.
So there, I've solved all their problems. I don't know why they aren't listening.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard for them too, because there's a lot of people who only want to read the comics in the comic book form, just like there's a lot of people who refuse to read ebooks.
Yeah, that would be me.
It's going to be that way. It's going to be that way for a while, I'm sure.
It will. We're in a transitional period.
Yeah, it's I feel like we're going through like the digital revolution that's bigger than the industrial revolution, where so many things that we took for granted that existed when we were kids that now are just completely going away. And it's interesting to see, observing my kids, I kind of see how habits have changed, that the things that I was into, they're not into, or they're into it in a different form, or they really eat the pop culture much quicker. I mean, gotta remember when I wanted to see certain things on video, I had to track it down, and I found a dealer in Florida where mail order I could get a VHS if I traded him something. And it was an adventure to track down a piece of media. Boom, 2 clicks, boom, look, Dad, it's playing.
Okay, I am embarrassed to admit, I think I should be on a podcast called Geek Geezer. I really think now, re-listening to this, I sound pathetic. Back to GeekDad.
Because I was wondering what your opinion is on IMAX 3D films then.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I had to pick one or the other, I'd pick IMAX. But IMAX 3D is just too much. The 3D doesn't make a movie better. I think we all agree. It's just a way for the studios to charge more. And the thing that they need to pay attention to is that attendance is going down. The habit of going to the movies, which I went to the movies when I was a kid, when I was my kid's age, there wasn't a week that went by that I didn't at least see one movie. And I had arranged my schedule in high school that my senior year, I didn't have to go to school on a Friday. I had like one morning class and that was it. And I would see every movie that came out on that Friday. I would see in an entire day. I would hop from theater to theater and I would see every film. My kids, they just don't. I'm like, hey, are you going to go see this? You going to go see the remake of The Thing? I don't know, maybe. Does this interest you? And I'm really curious. I'm always using my kids as like a focus group. Whenever I talk to them, I'm like, so this movie, this video game, I just want to hear how they see it from their perspective and how they make their choices, because I got to get something out of this. I'm spending so much money. I got to get something out of this whole parenting thing. It should be a little focus group feedback, but it's fascinating to me how the habit of going to the movies is actually being lost. And I read a statistic that teenagers would rather see a movie on their computer than go to the movies. This was a LA Times study that came out a couple of years ago, and it was really disheartening. And you have this whole thing now of not only that, but a growing group of kids who watch television while there's a computer and/or iPad in their lap.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I'm also guilty of that.
Yeah, well, I do that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was a study. Oh, it was released last year, I think. Talking about the average amount of time a kid spends, sort of
in front of a
absorbing media, right? In front of a screen, doing some sort of media, and it was like, they came up with like, was it like 11 hours a day? Because they would say, well, I mean, they counted that as like, well, if you're sitting in front of a screen here and you're reading, you're surfing the web and you're watching a TV show over here, and you're listening to
you doubled up
music, like they counted all of that, right? So they doubled up, somehow. So like, so it's not you're spending 11 hours of the day, but you're absorbing 11 hours worth of different.
Except you're not really.
Not really. I forget exactly, but still, I mean, that was the amount of they were showing like amount of screens, I guess, that they have going on.
Well,
constantly.
and I think there is so much more vying for their and our attention now,
right?
Than when Chris, when we were all kids, it was the movies were the special thing. We had if we were lucky and we had cable, we had a dozen or 20 channels. If we didn't have cable, we had 5 or 6 channels, and unless you had the VCR, you couldn't save stuff to watch later. Now, first of all, it's weird to think we live in a golden age of television. The number of channels that we have, and there is actually a lot of quality content out there being run on television. If you have a DVR in your house, we get to the point where we can't keep up with all this stuff that we literally do want to watch, that we love. And then great movies come out. But I mean, we're still a movie-going family. We've always been movie geeks, so we're still, we're raising our boys to value that experience.
Well, there is almost a sense of dread that comes to me when I see that there's a new show like this show Luck that just premiered on HBO. I don't want to like it because then it's another thing I have to do. It's another
Dustin Hoffman in it,
Right, I know, and I'm sure it's
Dustin
amazing.
Hoffman on TV, what?
I already have it on my DVR. It's already on season pass, but it's frustrating the amount of media. And the great thing is, policing my kids when it comes to the DVR is actually pretty easy. Like they really just don't want to be bothered with it. If they don't like it, they lose interest really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's where like my wife and I, or I do anyway. Like we watch a couple TV shows sometimes, but it's like for me sometimes there's almost a relief when I find out that a show I like is canceled.
That obligation is over now.
It's like, good. I can actually watch this entire show and finish it in my lifetime.
Well, now and then of course there's Netflix, which adds to the burden. I'm literally now working my way through DS9 again.
Wow.
But, if it's preparing dinner and doing dishes and stuff, I can get through, an episode or two a night just because first of all, it's only 43 minutes long per episode. There's no commercials. God, that was a great show. That was such a good show. But it's like, okay, so now I've got all of my life history of TV shows that I loved available to me. I've got all the great stuff that's on now and movies. And, geez, having a day job really sucks.
Do you find it's difficult to discover a show that you can watch with your kids where it hits both demographics? It's satisfying to you as a discerning adult and to your kids?
Well, realistically, especially the community that we have, GeekDad, we do a pretty good job at finding that stuff. Anywhere from, we were champions, especially because of Matt, of Phineas and Ferb from the beginning. And which has been a wonderful show and sort of hits all the demographics, and realistically, my kids are young, tweens and early teens, and we watch a whole bunch of stuff on USA and a little bit on Sci-Fi and so forth. The stuff works. The stuff works on multiple levels, and there is so much out there. You're going to find stuff.
There are hidden depths in My Little Ponies. So I've been told.
So you've been told, yes.
Oh yeah, and it's. We'll let the kids watch episodes of some of the shows that we watch. We just, some of them occasionally have somewhat more adult themes than we really want them exposed to at the moment. So we'll just not show them those episodes, But things like The Big Bang Theory, they find accessible most of the time when they're not too risque.
It's weird, like with my kids, I've gotten recently into this cartoon show Adventure Time, which definitely works on a young level, but also on a really young level, but also there's stuff that's going on there that's just bizarre, jokes about hipsters and just weird stuff. But my kids are now at the age where I can actually watch South Park with them, which is so much fun to be able to experience that show. And I love it because before that was a show that would definitely not be, that would be one that I'd have to hide from them. And now it's like, they made a South Park movie. You should check that one out. It's really, to me, like language doesn't bother me. Language is once they reach the teens, they're hearing worse stuff in the locker rooms at high school. So the language stuff doesn't bug me. It's to me, any sort of callousness towards humanity and or violence or I feel the filmmakers and or whoever the visionary is just irresponsible when it comes to some sense of morality. Like that bugs me. And I got my daughter actually into, you brought up Alien and the Alien films. I got my daughter when she was 14, a box set of all 9 Alien movies. Well, it wasn't 9. There were 9 discs. But it was this big box set.
Wait, what did I miss?
9 Alien. But it was like this big. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Alien Resurrection. Then there was Alien Redemption. There was Alien: The Next Generation.
Right.
Alien goes back to high school. And
there's Prometheus.
Alien on Broadway, which will probably be happening since everything's on Broadway lately. I cannot believe
they were all straight to video though, so
but I got her that, and because she was really into the Aliens, she fell in love with that movie. I think she really bonded with Newt, the character Newt. There's that mother-daughter relationship with Ripley, and her sense of her lost daughter sort of being reincarnated within Newt, so to speak. And she really loved that, and I even got her not just the DVD, but I got her this thing that H.R. Giger had. It was a mold of a back scratcher that I got from Japan that was designed by H.R. Giger, which is really creepy looking. I thought that was cool. But
would you want your back scratched with something? But
but no, my son, what's weird is he's completely different. Whereas my daughter loves horror. She loves there's not enough blood. I took them to a screening of Hot Fuzz where we sat in the front row, and Simon Pegg was there, and Nick Frost and Edgar Wright, and my daughter raised her hand and said there wasn't enough blood in this movie, which I thought was great. That's my daughter.
It really hurts. I'm gonna need an ice cream.
Oh my God, that was so great.
We showed that to the boys about 2 weeks ago. Finally, they loved it.
You do have to gauge what age. There's no sort of set age that a kid's ready. My son does not like stuff that's gory or gross.
Oh yeah.
And my daughter, while she loves the TV show Metalocalypse, my son watched an episode. It disturbed him so much. I mean, he broke down. It really bothered him. So it's you got to really kind of gauge like what age they're ready for stuff that is questionable. So to me, I would introduce it only if I felt that they were ready for it. But it's great also like when you're introducing through DVD because, well, they have to have the DVD to play it. When you have access to the internet, it is a whole different ball game, internet access on the computer. I mean, my son trashed 2 PCs. I'm serious, from looking at adult content. That's another. I'll have to tell you how I dealt with that. It's something of a story. I had a unique solution to fixing that.
Well, you'll have to write that one up for GeekDad.
Yeah, totally.
No, well, I'm happy to tell you the story. But your kids aren't that age where they're probably even have an interest in that.
It's starting.
Maybe getting there.
Yeah.
It says Ken's got a 13-year-old. So.
Because I'm sure we all had the experience where we found the adult magazine in the bushes. I don't know why. There was something about that. Maybe it was a pay it forward situation.
There's actually an adult literature fairy that leaves them when you turn a certain age.
What's funny is how common that story is. Why is that a common thread? Like so many, at least my generation I talked to, it's like that's how did you? Why did that happen to you? We're talking about people from different states and whatnot. I don't know why that is, but that's a huge thing. Just as a dad with kids who have access to technology and are smart.
And who's leaving their porn just lying around outside?
Right. Well, now they leave it with 2 clicks on the internet. You can pretty much get to anything. So my son had trashed these 2 computers. It was clear that he was looking at things he shouldn't have. These 2 PCs. Ended up finally getting him a Mac, but I had to discuss the solution with his mother and get her approval because I said, look, I sat him down. I said, look, obviously, and this is the funny thing he said. I said, look, I know what you've been looking at online. I know you've been looking at pictures of naked girls. And my son said, I'm not gay, Dad. And I said, hey, it wouldn't bother me if you were.
That's not the problem here.
That's not the issue. I said, the issue is, you have a sister, you have a mother, and it's the way that you're seeing these women on the internet. That's not the way you want to think of your mother, your sister, the women in your life. You want to have respect for women, and the way that these women are portrayed is not in a respectful way. So there's a clear difference between something like a Playboy and 2 Girls, 1 Cup, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's just like, I don't want him looking at the stuff that's disturbing. So my solution was this. I said, you absolutely cannot look at this stuff on the internet. I'm going to put on the Net Nanny stuff. Here's your computer. You'll have access to do your homework. You can't. However, I'm going to give you a gift. Here's an envelope. You can talk to me about this stuff. Keep this hidden under your bed. And it was the issues of Playboy where it's just like the bikini issue or the college issue. And I felt that if he wants to look at them, you can look at pictures of stuff, innocent enough, but it's not things where there are sexual acts portrayed. The things are not, it's basically just, it's stuff you would see in an art book at first year at college.
It's Cinemax, yeah.
Right. So I thought, if you've got this, if I'm giving you access to this and I'll give you some of your own magazines to look at and you'll be somewhat responsible about your looking at this stuff, because kids, when they reach a certain age, high school, you can't control it. And I think that the best way is at least to say, have a healthy view of it. I don't want him to be afraid of sex. I want him to have a healthy relationship with a woman. So I don't want to punish him mercilessly. But the stuff on the internet goes too far.
If it's anything that's possible.
Correct. So, it goes too far.
It is a good, creative, and open-minded, resolution to the issue.
Well, it was. I had to really get his mom's support on this. And this is also a conversation he wouldn't be having with her. This was just me sitting down saying, "Here are some Playboys without the articles. It's just the college spring break girls, this, that." Whatever. And I thought that was just about, because the thing is this, he could go to his friend's house and look it up. And I was just trying to, it was the solution when my mom found out I drank beer. She bought me beer and said, you can drink it here. You just can't leave the house.
Right.
And, it's not a perfect solution. It really does get complicated with kids at that stage of life. I mean, this happened when he was like 15. but I just felt that was the best way to deal with it. I want to encourage a healthy. I don't know how you guys feel. You probably have not had to deal with what I've had to deal with.
Not quite there yet. I'm sure it's totally coming. But I think overall it's that sensible, frank and open, and just try and make sure they understand. You want them to think positively about every aspect of their life and about the people that they deal with. And so when it comes to things like that, when it comes to how they're dealing with things in school and everything that they're reading and seeing in the media and whatever, make sure they understand. Make sure there's no questions or there's no assumptions being made that are wrong and could color their viewpoints in negative ways.
I completely agree. And I should say that the way that I delivered the speech was not as like, I wanted to talk to him in a way where he would feel comfortable coming to me if he had an issue, if he wanted to talk about some issue with dating and girls and whatnot. But I also have no interest in being his friend from the standpoint of, I feel old school dad from the standpoint of being his friend. Okay. I don't even care if my kids like me. I have one job. My job is to give them this information that they need and to these survival skills so that if I'm not around, they can take care of themselves, because that's my job.
I once, in all seriousness, talking to my son, I said, look, there's only two things you need to know. Don't be an idiot and don't do stupid shit. I think that's I don't know. I think that's pretty much all you need to know. If you just follow those two things. Okay, back for the final segment from GeekDad.
So I feel like there are times to go into what I call dad mode.
Oh yeah.
When you kind of have to put on. It's like it's like the voice from Dune. The movie Dune, when they say the voice. I put on this voice, and I am. Yeah, it's like the thing where if you say something in a certain tone of voice, like get over here, sit down. You do that dad voice, and kids listen to you.
Oh yeah.
It's like a superpower. It's like, oh my God, I can control these kids just by raising my voice and sounding a little mean. But at the end of the day, my kids then really actually respect me. And actually at the end of the day, they do actually like me. So, but my goal isn't to be their friend. My goal is to really be the parent, which I think is being lost. Like, I'm sure you guys must get as frustrated as I do when you're in public and you see a horrible parent. I never blame the kid. Some kid that's acting out or being a jerk or, some temper tantrum or pulling the mother or dad like into the store and the parent just out of physical exhaustion, just giving in, acquiescing to whatever the kid's, need of the moment is. It just infuriates me. Where is that old school like backbone?
Yeah.
I ask of you, the Council of Geek Dads.
Yeah. We wish if we had that answer, we could write it. Volumes of self-help books. But I can't stand parents who refuse to discipline their kids. Just drive me nuts. I can't stand that.
And here's one for you, and I'm sure there'll be a range of answers, but I have a feeling is the out to dinner with your children, assuming they're teen, tween, or earlier, and parents are talking, having a lovely time, and the kid has a DS, an iPad, or whatever, and is watching a movie or playing a game at the table during the whole meal.
No, that's not allowed.
And there is no interaction. There is nothing. That is, I think that is, and I've known friends that have done this with their kids, and it's like, I think that's a serious mistake, because you have now taught the kids that it's okay for them to be in a social situation and not be part of it, and that what they're doing is not interesting to you, and what you're doing shouldn't be of interest to them. And I totally understand parents with tiny kids or small kids needing the break and wanting to be able to communicate with each other. But you know what? Part of this is what you signed up for, and part of parenting is raising your kids to be part of the family unit. And so, we've got the rules that, if the drive to go anywhere is under 20 minutes, no devices come out, and no devices come out during a meal, and all of that. I think it's vital.
Well, your kids have the iPhones. I think the next time that they do that, they pull it out at the table, just do a FaceTime call.
Right.
And then You could be talking into the device. Yeah, but it's funny. It's like it's not just kids. Also, with the device addiction, I see that. You just go to any bar or club on a Friday, Saturday night, and I remember I wanted to take a picture of this. It was amazing. 4 incredibly attractive women in their late 20s, all their faces all lit up and their necks craned down into their device. 4 of them at a table together. They're together, but they're not together, and it was bizarre. And I catch myself doing it too. I mean, I do like the instant communication of text, but once I'm with the people I'm going to get to, and those those arrangements have been made via the device, I want to be done with it.
Yeah. Have you heard of phone stacking? Have you tried that?
Yeah.
No, what's that?
It's so you get to a restaurant and everyone stacks their phones face down in a pile, right? And the first person who picks up their phone to check something gets the bill.
I love that. That's like Jenga.
So that's it for this week's special Father's Day edition of PodCRASH with GeekDad. I really want to thank Ken Denmead, Jonathan Liu, and Matt Blum from Wired. Just really great podcast that you should be listening to. You can check out more at wired.com/geekdad. Also follow them on Twitter at WiredGeekDad. And you can go to Facebook and look up the GeekDad page. And however you celebrate your Father's Day, whether you are a father or you have one, just pay tribute to the man, because it's not easy being a dad sometimes. I think, as you can tell from some of the things I've had to deal with myself. And back to the show, you can also follow us on Twitter at PodCRASH Show. Follow me at that Chris Gore. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/PodCRASH, and go to iTunes, give us a review. That's it. And as I like to say, on every edition of PodCRASH, I like to say one thing, and I say it every week. Let's get out of here.
Father! Father! The sleeper has awakened!
Hey, if you're still listening to this, you're probably a lot like me. You're the kind of person who stays through the end credits of a movie. For that, you shall be rewarded. Send me a self-addressed stamped envelope to PodCRASH with that Chris Gore, 5042 Wilshire Boulevard, PMB 1500, Los Angeles, California 90036, and I will return your self-addressed stamped envelope with a surprise. And you would have never guessed this. Here's a piece of audio from GeekDad, and it's kind of a funny story about a thing called Frankenperreri. Happy Father's Day. Later.
It's funny. Well, my kids were actually used in a bit on Attack of the Show. It was called Frankenperreri, and it was a commercial. And they used my kids in the commercial, and it was actually ended up being a pretty funny commercial. And Kevin Pereira was in it, and they used my kids. It was funny when they were young, but then they got in this whole thing like, I'm their dad. I have to give permission legally to allow them to be used. And it created this whole new rule at G4 because of my kids being used in this bit without upper management being aware that now kids could not be used in any segments whatsoever.
Oh no!
And there was not an issue. They didn't get paid, but I said, look, you'll get to be in this commercial. It's fun. And they gave them some toys and video games and whatnot for their time. And they don't regret the experience.